poor girl looking for a job walked into the wrong place and was hired to be the CEO's wife. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's dive into the story. Emma Brooks was standing at the corner of a bustling New York City street, clutching her resume tightly in her hand. She had been sending out applications for months, but no one had called. The rejection emails were piling up, and she was running out of options. With a sigh, she glanced at the address on her phone one more time. The building in front of her looked impressive, towering over the others with its sleek glass windows reflecting the afternoon sun. It was a high-end tech company, and Emma knew she didn't belong in a place like this. But what choice did she have? The job fair she had attended that morning had been a bust. She had no more interviews lined up, and the bills were stacking up. She could barely make rent this month, let alone pay for her mom's medical bills. Taking a deep breath, she walked through the revolving doors, hoping for a miracle. Inside, the lobby was elegant, with polished marble floors and modern artwork hanging on the walls. Emma hesitated for a moment, unsure if she should even be there. But before she could leave, a receptionist smiled at her and asked if she needed help. "I'm here for the interview," Emma said, trying to sound confident. The receptionist glanced at the clipboard in front of her and then gave a polite smile. "You're expected in the conference room. Just take the elevator to the top floor." Emma nodded, heart racing as she entered the elevator. The doors closed, and the small car began its ascent to the top floor. As she reached the floor, she could already feel her nerves starting to get the best of her. She had no experience in tech, and the only thing she had going for her was a part-time waitressing job at a diner. What was she even doing here? The elevator pinged softly as it stopped, and she stepped into a hallway that looked as if it belonged in a five-star hotel. The carpet was soft beneath her feet, and the air smelled faintly of lavender and vanilla. She followed the signs to the conference room, where the door was slightly ajar. She knocked gently before pushing it open, only to freeze when she saw the man sitting at the head of the long, polished table. He was tall, sharply dressed, and looked completely out of place in this modern office. His piercing blue eyes were fixed on the papers in front of him, and he didn't look up when she entered. Excuse me," Emma said nervously, her voice barely above a whisper. The man's eyes flicked up to meet hers, his expression unreadable. "You must be Kevin?" she asked, instantly regretting it. The man's brow furrowed, but he didn't correct her. Instead, he gave a tight smile and gestured to the chair across from him. "Yes, I'm Kevin," he said in a deep, measured voice. Emma sat down, still unsure of what was happening. He didn't seem like someone she would normally interact with. He looked like a CEO, confident, aloof, and unapproachable. As they started talking, Emma could feel the tension in the air. She nervously fidgeted with her resume while he asked her questions about her work history, her qualifications, and her goals. She had no idea what he was expecting from her. She wasn't qualified for a job at a tech company. She barely knew how to use a computer. But as the minutes passed, something shifted. His questions became more personal, more probing, as if he were genuinely interested in her answers. For the first time in a long while, Emma felt like someone was actually listening to her. When the interview was over, the man, Kevin, stood up and extended his hand. "You're hired," he said simply. Emma blinked, unsure if she had heard him correctly. "I'm sorry, what?" she asked, her voice rising in disbelief. "You're hired," he repeated, his smile barely perceptible. "But there's a condition. You'll need to marry me." Emma's heart stopped. This couldn't be real. "What?" she gasped. Kevin's smile didn't falter. "It's a business arrangement. I need a wife for an upcoming event, and you need a job. This could be the solution for both of us." Emma's mind raced. Was this some sort of scam? Was he joking? But the sincerity in his eyes told her otherwise. And as she looked around the luxurious office, she realized this was her chance. Maybe it wasn't what she had planned, but it was an opportunity. And for the first time in months, Emma felt like she had a way out of her situation. Emma was still sitting in shock, her hand trembling as she shook Kevin's. The words, "You're hired," echoed in her mind. It felt like a dream, and yet, the warmth of his firm handshake grounded her back in reality. She had barely managed to hold herself together during the interview, but this was something else entirely. Marrying a stranger, a man like him, seemed too absurd, too surreal to comprehend. But as she looked into his calm, calculating eyes, Emma felt the weight of her situation. She was running out of time, and this could be her way out. With no other options left, she forced herself to speak. "Are you serious?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kevin nodded, his expression unwavering. "It's a business arrangement," he said. "There's an event I need to attend, and my family is pressuring me to get married. You need a job, and I need a wife for a few months. It's a fair exchange. Nothing more, nothing less." Emma tried to process his words, her mind racing. This was insane, but in a way, it was exactly the kind of crazy she needed. She had nothing left to lose. "And you're sure this will help me?" she asked, struggling to keep her voice steady. "Of course," Kevin replied. "You'll be well compensated. I'll cover all your expenses, and you'll have a place to stay. You'll be part of my world for a while, no strings attached." He paused, a flicker of something unreadable crossing his face. "And I'll make sure you're taken care of." Emma took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. Her mom's hospital bills, the rent she couldn't afford, everything she had worked for was slipping through her fingers. But now, there was a chance to fix everything. "I'm in," she said, her voice firm, even if her hands still shook. Kevin's lips twitched into a small smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Good. I'll have my assistant set everything up. We'll need to sign a contract, of course, and I'll introduce you to my family at the gala next month. But for now, let's get you settled in." As they walked out of the conference room, Emma's mind was a whirlwind. She was about to marry a man she didn't know, all for a job she wasn't qualified for, in a world that felt as foreign to her as a dream. But as they reached the elevator, she couldn't help but wonder, what was he hiding behind that perfect exterior? And what would this arrangement mean for both of them in the end? The elevator doors closed, and Emma pressed the button for the lobby, her heart racing. She was about to step into a life she couldn't have imagined, but maybe, just maybe, it would be the fresh start she had been desperately waiting for. As Emma walked out of the sleek office building, her heart was still pounding from the decision she had just made. A few hours ago, she had been desperate, clinging to the hope that something, anything, would give her a break. Now, she had a contract to marry a stranger, a man she barely knew, and be part of his world. She could hardly wrap her mind around it. But one thing was clear, she had no other choice. The thought of her mom's medical bills, the overdue rent, and the endless rejection emails pushed her forward. This was her chance. The car that Kevin had arranged was waiting for her outside. A black SUV with tinted windows. Emma slipped inside, staring out at the city skyline as it blurred past. The weight of the moment settled in her chest. She wasn't just going to be a wife. She was stepping into a world that felt miles away from her own. Kevin had said she'd be well taken care of, but she wondered how much of that was true. The luxurious office, the quiet confidence in his voice, it all seemed too perfect to be real. Emma had always been an optimist, but even she knew that the world of wealth and power didn't come without its shadows. The SUV pulled up to a grand building, a mansion in the heart of the city. The gates swung open as the car approached, revealing lush gardens and a sprawling estate. Emma's breath caught in her throat. This wasn't just a home, it was a fortress. The driver opened the door for her, and she stepped out, her heels clicking on the marble driveway. "Welcome home." Kevin's voice broke through her thoughts. He had followed her out of the car, his presence as commanding as ever. He wasn't smiling, but his gaze softened for a moment when he saw her reaction. "This is where you'll stay for the time being. It's not much, but it's comfortable." Emma tried to hide her surprise. "Not much?" she repeated under her breath, glancing at the mansion's stone walls, the vast courtyard, and the fountains that sparkled under the moonlight. This was more than she could have ever imagined. Kevin led her inside, where the interior was just as grand as the outside. Crystal chandeliers, expensive paintings on the walls, and sleek modern furniture. Everything was pristine, immaculate. A world far removed from the small apartment she had been renting, where things were constantly breaking, and the noise of the city never stopped. They walked through the expansive hallway, and Kevin stopped in front of a large wooden door. "This will be your room," he said, opening it to reveal a luxurious suite. The bed was enormous, with silk sheets and a velvet headboard. The room had its own private bathroom, a walk-in closet, and floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a breathtaking view of the city. Emma could hardly believe this was real. She stepped inside, feeling the soft carpet beneath her feet. Kevin stood by the door, watching her. "I'll have the staff bring you anything you need," he said. "Get some rest. We'll discuss the details of the arrangement tomorrow." With that, he turned and left, the door closing softly behind him. Emma stood there for a moment, taking it all in. She had no idea what to expect next, but one thing was certain. Her life had just changed. As she looked out at the glittering city below, she couldn't help but wonder what Kevin's true intentions were. And, more importantly, what was waiting for her in this strange new life. The next morning, Emma woke up in the grand bedroom, the soft light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. For a moment, she thought it was all a dream, but as she stretched and saw the lavish surroundings, the reality hit her. Again, she had agreed to marry a man she barely knew, and now she was living in his mansion, part of a world she had only ever seen in movies. She stood up and made her way to the window, looking out over the city below. The sun was rising, casting a golden glow over the skyline. Emma couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. She had always dreamed of something better for herself, but not like this. The door creaked open, and a staff member entered, holding a tray with breakfast. "Mr. Parker has asked that you join him downstairs when you are ready," the woman said before leaving, her voice as smooth as the polished floors. Emma nodded, feeling both nervous and excited. She wasn't sure what the day would bring, but she had to admit that the thought of finally having a stable job, a place to live, and the possibility of making things right with her mom felt like a small weight had been lifted from her shoulders. After getting dressed in one of the many elegant outfits Kevin had arranged for her, Emma walked downstairs, her heels clicking on the marble floors. She entered the formal dining room to find Kevin already seated at the long, polished table. He looked up as she entered, offering a slight smile. "Good morning," he said. "I hope you slept well." Emma hesitated for a moment before sitting down across from him. "I did. Thank you," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. The tension in the room was palpable, as if both of them were aware of the strange situation they were in but were unsure how to address it. A staff member served them breakfast, and the room filled with the sounds of clinking silverware. Kevin broke the silence. "We'll need to start preparing for the gala next week," he said. "You'll meet my family, and we'll need to appear convincing." Emma nodded, unsure of what he meant by convincing, but she didn't question it. "Okay," she replied. Kevin continued, his voice calm and businesslike. "I need you to attend a few meetings with me over the next few days, get familiar with the company. You'll also have to attend social events to maintain the image we're creating. The marriage contract is just a formality, but I want to make sure we both uphold our parts." Emma felt a little overwhelmed, but nodded again. "I understand." Kevin's expression softened slightly, though he kept his professional demeanor. "I'll make sure you're comfortable, and the staff will be here to assist you with anything you need." As they finished breakfast, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that she was playing a part in a game she didn't fully understand. The idea of marrying Kevin still seemed absurd, but part of her was beginning to feel that maybe, just maybe, there was more to him than the cold, distant CEO persona he portrayed. As she excused herself from the table and headed back upstairs, Emma caught a glimpse of her reflection in a mirror hanging in the hallway. She was no longer the girl she had been a few days ago, desperate, worried, and on the edge. Now, she was stepping into a new life, one that came with its own set of rules and expectations. And as much as she didn't know what was coming next, she couldn't help but feel a small spark of hope that this strange arrangement might lead her to a place she had never imagined. As the days passed, Emma settled into her new life with a mixture of awe and unease. Kevin had kept his word. She was well taken care of, with a team of staff at her disposal and all her needs met. The mansion was stunning, and the luxury that surrounded her felt like a different world. She spent her days attending meetings with Kevin, learning about his business, and getting used to the high society events they had to attend. The galas, the charity dinners, the board meetings, they all felt like scenes from a movie, and she, the leading lady who had no idea how to act. But as strange as it all was, she couldn't deny that she was starting to grow fond of the life she had stumbled into. Kevin, however, remained as distant as ever. He was polite, professional, and rarely allowed anything personal to slip through the cracks. Emma found herself wondering what lay behind the carefully constructed persona he projected. During one of their evening dinners, as they sat in the grand dining room, Kevin spoke about their upcoming charity gala. "You'll need to be at your best tomorrow night," he said, looking up from his phone. "My family will be there. It's important that we play our roles." Emma nodded, adjusting her glass of wine nervously. "I understand," she replied, forcing a smile. The thought of meeting Kevin's family made her uneasy. What would they think of her? A waitress turned fake wife. Was she really prepared for this? But she had no choice. She had agreed to this arrangement, and now she had to go through with it. "Don't worry," Kevin said, noticing the uncertainty in her eyes. "Just be yourself. The rest will take care of itself." Emma appreciated his words, but there was something about him that made her feel like she was missing a crucial piece of the puzzle. That night, as she prepared for the gala, she couldn't help but feel a little nervous. She dressed in an elegant black gown, the fabric smooth and luxurious against her skin. Her hair was styled perfectly, and she felt like she had stepped into a world she wasn't quite sure she belonged in. When she walked downstairs, Kevin was already waiting for her, dressed in a sharp suit that made him look even more imposing. His gaze softened for just a moment when he saw her. "You look stunning," he said, his voice quiet but sincere. For the first time since they had met, Emma felt a flutter in her chest. She wasn't sure what it was. Was it gratitude, admiration, or something else entirely? But there was something about the way he looked at her that made her wonder if he saw her as more than just a business partner. As they arrived at the gala, Emma felt a knot in her stomach. The room was filled with high-profile people, business leaders, celebrities, socialites. Everyone was impeccably dressed, exchanging polite smiles and small talk, and Emma felt out of place. But Kevin was by her side, and his presence gave her the strength to carry on. As the night wore on, Emma found herself getting more comfortable. She chatted with a few guests, listened to Kevin's conversations, and even managed to laugh a few times. Despite the underlying tension, she was beginning to see another side of Kevin. He wasn't just the cold CEO. He was also someone who cared about his business, his reputation, and his family. As they left the gala later that evening, Kevin turned to her. "You did well tonight," he said, his tone softer than usual. Emma smiled, grateful for the compliment. "Thank you." The drive back to the mansion was quiet, but Emma couldn't help but wonder about what was happening between them. Was this truly just a business arrangement? Or was there something more developing, something neither of them had expected? As she lay in bed that night, Emma realized she had begun to care about Kevin more than she had anticipated. But what would that mean for the future of their arrangement? And more importantly, what would happen when the contract finally ended? As the weeks went by, Emma's life began to take on a rhythm she had never known. She had settled into the mansion, and despite the underlying tension of the contract she had with Kevin, she was starting to feel comfortable in the world he had introduced her to. The staff had become familiar faces, the high society events less intimidating, and Kevin's cold demeanor, though still present, was softened by moments of kindness. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make her wonder if she was beginning to matter to him. The days were filled with meetings, charity events, and dinners, but the nights were where Emma began to feel the most confused. She would often find herself lying awake in the huge bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Kevin. He was distant, yes, but there were small moments that hinted at something more. The way he would look at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention, the brief touches of his hand when passing her something, and the rare moments of laughter that seemed to come so easily between them. They were nothing more than fleeting moments, yet they were enough to make Emma question everything. Was this just a business arrangement? Or was she starting to fall for him? One evening, as they attended another gala, this time for a tech startup that Kevin had recently invested in, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed between them. She had gotten used to the bright lights, the cameras, and the constant chatter of guests. But tonight felt different. Kevin was acting more attentive than usual, his eyes softening whenever they met hers, and he even seemed to seek her out in the crowd. As they made their way through the gala, they were approached by several people, each eager to speak with Kevin. Emma stood quietly by his side, a silent observer of his world. But it was then, as they spoke to a few business partners, that she noticed it. Kevin had introduced her as his wife, not in passing or with the usual cold indifference, but with pride. "This is Emma, my wife," he had said, his voice firm, his hand resting gently on the small of her back. Emma's heart skipped a beat at the way he said it. It wasn't like the other times, when they had played the part of a couple for the sake of appearances. This felt real. Or at least, it felt like Kevin wanted it to be real. As the night went on, Emma found herself thinking more and more about what that small gesture meant. She knew their arrangement was temporary, just a contract with an end date looming over them. But for the first time, she wondered if Kevin might be seeing her as more than just a business partner. By the time they left the gala, Kevin seemed quieter than usual, his eyes distant as he looked out the window of the car. Emma's mind was racing, but she didn't know what to say. She wanted to ask him what he had meant by introducing her as his wife, but something held her back. Instead, she stared out the window, her thoughts swirling. When they arrived back at the mansion, Kevin didn't immediately go to his office like he usually did. Instead, he paused in the doorway, glancing back at Emma. "I know this wasn't the way you expected things to go," he said, his voice low and uncharacteristically gentle. Emma looked up at him, her heart pounding. "I didn't expect any of this," she replied honestly. "But I'm glad I'm here. I think I'm starting to understand you a little better." Kevin's gaze softened, and for a moment, there was silence between them. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away, leaving Emma standing there, more confused than ever. As she lay in bed that night, Emma couldn't help but feel that she had crossed a line. She had started to care about him, maybe more than she should have. And now, she had no idea what was going to happen next. The following days felt like a blur to Emma. The closer she got to Kevin, the more she questioned everything about their arrangement. She had expected to feel nothing, to merely go through the motions, but something had shifted between them after the gala. His introduction of her as his wife still echoed in her mind, and the way his hand rested on her back at that moment made her stomach flutter. It was clear that Kevin was different from the man she had first met, distant, cold, and professional. He was still all those things, but now there were moments of tenderness, fleeting but undeniable. The more she saw him, the more Emma realized how little she truly knew about him. And as much as she wanted to avoid it, she found herself thinking about him more than she should have. Kevin, for his part, continued to be as mysterious as ever. He was attentive, yes, but emotionally guarded. Their days were filled with business and social events, and their nights were a mix of silence and small talk. They never discussed the personal aspects of their lives, and Emma didn't press. After all, she was just here to play a role. But as time went on, she couldn't ignore the growing feelings she had for him. One evening, after a particularly stressful meeting, Kevin asked Emma to join him for a walk in the garden. It was rare for him to suggest spending time together outside of their professional commitments. The garden was quiet. The only sounds were the distant hum of the city and the rustling of leaves in the wind. The moonlight bathed the flowers and trees in a soft glow. They walked side by side, neither of them speaking for a long while. Eventually, Kevin broke the silence. "I know this is not what either of us expected," he said quietly. Emma looked up at him, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. "I never thought this would be my life," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I'd be in a small apartment, barely scraping by. But this..." She gestured around the garden, at the mansion, at the life she now led. "It's surreal." Kevin stopped walking and turned to face her. His expression softened, the usual stoic mask slipping for just a moment. "I didn't expect any of this either," he said. "But I'll be honest with you, Emma. This contract, this arrangement, it was never just about business for me." Emma's heart skipped a beat, and she felt a rush of emotions she couldn't contain. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice shaky. Kevin took a step closer, his gaze intense. "I didn't expect to care about you," he admitted, his voice low. "But I do, more than I should." Emma felt a wave of relief wash over her, mixed with confusion. She had wondered if it was just her, if she was reading too much into his gestures, his small moments of kindness. But hearing him say it out loud made everything feel so much more real. "Kevin," she began, but her words caught in her throat. He placed a hand on her shoulder gently, looking into her eyes. "I never meant for this to happen," he continued. "But now, I can't ignore how I feel." The air between them seemed to crackle with unspoken tension, and for a moment, Emma wasn't sure what to do. Her heart was racing, and her mind was swirling with questions. Did this mean he wanted something more? Was he finally seeing her as more than just a part of the deal? Before she could speak, Kevin stepped back, his expression shifting back to something more guarded. "I'm sorry," he said quickly, his tone apologetic. "I didn't mean to complicate things." Emma stood there, frozen in place. He had just opened up to her in a way he never had before, but now he was pulling back. It felt like a step forward and a step back all at once. She wasn't sure where this left them, but for the first time since their arrangement had started, Emma couldn't ignore the truth that was staring her in the face. She was falling for him, and she wasn't sure if that was a mistake or the beginning of something real. The days following their conversation in the garden were filled with a mix of confusion and uncertainty. Kevin had opened up, something Emma never thought he would do, and yet, the distance between them was still palpable. He had admitted that he cared about her, but his sudden retreat left her wondering if he truly meant it or if it was just a fleeting moment. She had always been cautious with her feelings, but now, every interaction with Kevin seemed loaded with unspoken tension. They continued with their usual routine, attending meetings, appearing at social events, and carrying on with their contract. But things felt different now. Emma couldn't shake the feeling that she was more involved in this than she had ever intended. She had agreed to the arrangement, knowing it was temporary, but now it felt like the line between business and something real was blurring. One evening, as they returned to the mansion after yet another lavish event, Kevin asked her to meet him in his study. Emma's heart skipped a beat. This was unusual. Kevin rarely sought her out in private. She followed him upstairs, her mind racing with possibilities. When she entered the room, he was standing by the window, looking out at the city lights. The soft glow from the desk lamp illuminated his features, making him seem even more distant than usual. He turned to face her as she stepped inside, his expression unreadable. "I've been thinking," he began, his voice steady, but there was a hint of hesitation in it. "About what we talked about the other night." Emma's pulse quickened. Was he going to pull away again? Was he going to tell her it had been a mistake to open up? She took a step closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do you mean?" Kevin met her gaze, and for a moment, they both just stood there, the silence heavy between them. "I don't want you to feel like this is just a contract," he said, his words slow, deliberate. "I know I've kept my distance, but it's not because I don't care. It's because I'm afraid." Emma's heart softened at his confession. She had always seen him as the unshakable CEO, someone who controlled everything around him. But in that moment, she saw the vulnerability beneath the surface. "Afraid of what?" she asked gently. Kevin ran a hand through his hair, his frustration evident. "Afraid of what this could become," he admitted. "I didn't plan on this, on you." Emma felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. She understood. They had both entered this arrangement with clear boundaries, and yet, those boundaries had started to crumble. Kevin had never intended to fall for her, and Emma had never expected to fall for him. But now, the feelings were undeniable. "I don't want to hurt you," Kevin continued, his voice softer now. "I care about you, Emma. I don't know what this means for us, but I don't want it to end because of some contract." Emma took a deep breath, her emotions swirling. She had been holding back, afraid to confront the feelings that had been growing inside her. But now, hearing Kevin speak so openly, she knew that she couldn't keep pretending this was just business. "I care about you too," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "But I'm scared. Scared of what comes next." Kevin stepped closer to her, his presence overwhelming. "We don't have to figure it out right now," he said, his hand reaching out to gently touch her arm. "But I don't want to walk away from this without knowing what it could be." Emma's heart raced as she looked up at him, her thoughts in a whirlwind. Could they make this work? Could they go beyond the contract and build something real? She didn't know. But in that moment, with Kevin standing in front of her, she knew one thing. Whatever happened next, she couldn't go back to the way things were before. The future was uncertain, but it was theirs to figure out together. As the weeks passed, Emma and Kevin's relationship continued to evolve in unexpected ways. What had started as a simple business arrangement, one born out of necessity and convenience, was slowly turning into something much more complicated. Kevin had been right when he said they didn't have to figure it out right away. They both took their time, exploring their feelings, their fears, and the uncertain future that lay ahead. They were no longer just playing roles at social events and meetings. They were learning to navigate the complexities of a real relationship. The distance that once defined them had begun to close. Kevin still had his moments of reserve, the walls he'd built around himself, but Emma could see the cracks. They shared more honest conversations, not about business or appearances, but about their lives, their dreams, and their pasts. They even started to laugh together, a sound Emma had never expected to hear between them. Then came the day that everything shifted. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon, the kind where time seemed to slow down. Kevin had invited her to a small gathering with a few close friends, something simple, something without the usual pretense. As they walked into the room, she noticed how different it felt compared to the grand galas they'd attended before. The air was relaxed, filled with laughter and genuine conversation. Kevin introduced her as his wife, but this time, there was no hesitation, no business-like formality. He said it like he meant it. Emma's heart fluttered as she realized just how far they had come. That evening, as the party died down and the guests started to leave, Kevin pulled her aside. He led her to the balcony, where the night air was cool and the city lights sparkled below. They stood there in silence for a moment, each lost in their thoughts. Kevin finally spoke, his voice quiet, but full of emotion. "I know this wasn't what either of us planned," he said, "but I can't deny what's between us anymore." Emma looked at him, her heart pounding. She had known it for a while now, but hearing him say it out loud made it real. "I feel the same way," she whispered, her voice full of vulnerability. Kevin took her hand in his thumb gently brushing over her knuckles. "I don't want this to end," he said softly. "I don't want us to go back to the way things were before. I want to build something real, something lasting." Emma felt tears welling up in her eyes. She never imagined she would be here, in this moment, with Kevin. The man who had started as a stranger, someone she had been hired to pretend to be married to, had become someone she truly cared for. "I don't want it to end either," she said, her voice trembling. "I want to see where this goes." Kevin smiled, a genuine smile, one that reached his eyes. "Then let's take it one step at a time," he said. And in that moment, Emma knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together. The contract had ended, but what they had built was just beginning. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't easy, but it was real, and that was all they needed. Kevin leaned in, and for the first time since they had met, they shared a kiss that sealed the promise of what was to come. A future, not built on contracts or expectations, but on something far more important: love. In this captivating journey through a life-changing arrangement, Emma finds herself drawn into a world far beyond her expectations. Starting with an unexpected meeting with a wealthy CEO, she is thrust into a temporary marriage contract that turns into something much more complicated. As they navigate their roles in the high society world, both Emma and Kevin discover that what began as a mere business deal is evolving into real feelings and genuine emotions. This transformation, full of unexpected twists and heartfelt moments, reflects the essence of classic millionaire stories. With each passing day, Emma realizes that the life she once dreamed of, filled with stability and love, might just be within her reach. As she opens up to Kevin and they begin to confront their fears, the lines between their arranged marriage and true connection blur. The tension between business and love makes this tale resonate with anyone who has ever wondered what happens when love and money mix. In the end, their story is more than just a fairy tale. It is one of personal growth, vulnerability, and rediscovered hope. Like many millionaire stories, Emma and Kevin's journey shows that even the most unexpected beginnings can lead to life-changing endings, where love becomes the greatest reward. The finale of this gripping story shows that despite the odds, true love can still bloom in the most unlikely of places, making it one of the most unforgettable millionaire stories you'll ever hear.